rocking one of my old high school shirts. Most of these shirts were way too big for me, but now they fit thanks to vitamin T. This shirt is from 2005, so let me know in the comments if this t-shirt is older than you are. Hi, I'm JACKISNOTABIRD, and I just went to my 10-year high school reunion in Texas as a trans guy who came out after high school. To give you some context of how jarring it might have been for some people who I haven't been in touch with since coming out and transitioning at 25 for them to see me, here's what I looked like my senior year of high school. So a couple of things have changed. Yeah, I had the kind of trans narrative that included a couple of phases of deep repression of my gender identity. I mean, this is what I looked like as a kid. But by the time I was in high school, I'd seen just enough representation of trans people to know that the weird feelings I'd always had probably meant that I was trans, but I hadn't seen enough representation to not be ashamed of it. So high school peer pressure, wanting to fit in, wanting a boyfriend meant shoving my true feelings down and trying to pass as a girl. And it worked well enough, like to get a boyfriend, or several. I hooked up with more people than I kind of remembered until my reunion this month when they just kept popping up everywhere at the bar. And seeing people I'd hooked up with but haven't seen since prior to coming out as a man was something I was especially scared of. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's rewind to the biggest question that I've gotten about this. Why the hell did I go to my 10-year reunion? Most people that I know, trans, cis, straight, whatever, most of them have no desire to go to their reunion. So why would I go when I have all of this baggage, and literally had to pay for more baggage because I had to fly from New York City down to Fort Worth, Texas to attend it? Why would I do all of that? Well, the simplest answer is I forgot that I'm trans. Like seriously, for the year or so that hometown friends were discussing plans, I was totally gung-ho about attending. I had some friends in high school who scoffed at school spirit and traditions, but I had others who were in all of the organizations responsible for planning them, and at the end of the day, I think I kind of liked some of that stuff too, you know? Like, I did the homecoming thing one year, I went to 3 proms, and yeah, I've always wanted to go to my high school reunion. I had a much better time in high school than in college, and I've kept in touch with a lot of my high school friends, but not all of them, and a lot of us have moved all around the world, so I was excited for a chance when all of our schedules would line up for a bunch of us to be back in town at the same time, which never happens. And it was only a few months ago, after explaining all this to people, talking about my plans to go down to Texas for my reunion, that someone pointed out to me that I am in fact transgender, and wouldn't that perhaps at the very least make me nervous? And I said, oh right, I am transgender. That had not occurred to me. So that is when I started getting nervous. I know that some people I went to school with have veered more conservative since graduating. Certainly more than a few of them are Trump voters. Probably not anyone that I was good friends with, but what if those Trump voter people found out who and what I am? Like, would they say something rude to me? Would they get physical? I was also concerned that some of the otherwise ideologically centrist guys who had had crushes on me or dated me would turn ugly in their self-conscious transphobia. You know, it's one thing to theoretically accept the idea of a trans person, but it is quite another to be confronted with a woman you were once attracted to and find out she's a man. And that's being very generous for their interpretations of how I identify. But some dudes get really uncomfortable with that. It's that similar but sort of reverse toxic reasoning that causes so many men to murder trans women. They felt like they were tricked and that the trans women they went out with weren't real women, so they get violent. It's a huge reason why the murder rate is so high for trans women. Now, I was hoping that none of this would happen at my reunion, of course, but it is a reality that all trans people have to grapple with, so I was trying to be prepared. I only booked my plane tickets when I had confirmed that several of my close friends would be in attendance. Friends that I've spent time with since coming out, friends that I could vent my worries to, friends who were ready to take action if any situation escalated, or who had simply agreed that I could pretend to be their out-of-town boyfriend to any people that I didn't feel comfortable outing myself to for whatever reason. As it turns out, none of that was necessary. Except the venting. I did a lot of venting to them, especially on the day of and for the first 45 minutes or so when I was wildly nervous and refusing to get up from the safety of a picnic table that I'd parked myself at. But after a few people came up and greeted me by name, my current name, not the one that I used in high school, I gained a little bit more confidence and started just enjoying all the normal weirdness of a high school reunion. That's the other question a lot of you had for me. Did people recognize me? It seemed so, and maybe even more so than I recognized some of them. A lot of folks aged more than I expected, and like, I swear, Half of the dudes had second growth spurts in college. Everyone was just so much bigger and older looking than me. And I don't mean that to be rude, like they looked old, they just looked our age, which I don't. There were so many people I had to squint at before I could figure out who they were. It was like that scene in Hook when the lost boy is squishing Peter Pan's face all around and staring into his eyes to see him. I mean, I didn't actually squish any people's faces though, like face grease, gross. But yeah, I'd been really unsure how many people had gotten the memo about my transition. I graduated with over 600 other people, and I didn't know all of them then, and Facebook wasn't huge until we were in college, so I'm not even online friends with most of them. But it turns out that when you make YouTube videos that reach tens of thousands of people a month and give a big old TED talk about how trans you are, people find that stuff. So a lot more people were in the know and able to recognize me and greet me as Jackson than I expected, which was a relief because I was sure as heck not about to walk up to some folks and introduce myself when I didn't know if they knew. Now, the last thing that I want to share is that before the reunion, I was kind of frustrated because I'm not gonna lie, I have a little bit of that competitive spirit that lots of people do going into a reunion. You know, you want to show you're leading a successful life, whatever that means to you. And I was kind of thinking like, I have a pretty cool life. I mean, not the coolest of some of the folks I've graduated with who are famous models and actors or whizzed through med school or earning a bunch of money. But I thought I had a couple of bragging rights, you know, maybe. Before the event, I was frustrated that mine and everyone else's energy would be devoted to paying attention to my transness instead of my cool accomplishments. But what ended up happening was that not only did hardly anyone spare a word of conversation to my gender, but I didn't end up feeling all that proud of my accomplishments either. So many people there brought their spouses and pictures of their babies and talked about the houses they'd just bought with the steady income they're making from a job they can actually explain to people. And I just started feeling behind. Like I wanted what they had instead of what I have. Everyone defines and values success in different ways, and I think I've recently been redefining that for myself, veering more towards wanting stability and family life, and not as much of the shiny events and career accolades. I mean, I guess ideally a balance of both would be nice, but my reunion was a little bit of a gut punch in realizing how far behind I am on one part of life that I would very much like to have. And I mean, it's pretty common for LGBTQIA+ people, especially trans people, to be a little behind on these milestones. We often don't get to be ourselves until early adulthood, so we have to work out a lot of things that cis or straight people worked out earlier in life. And we have challenges when it comes to employment, housing, medical needs, mental and emotional health, and relationships in general. So I know that I shouldn't be so hard on myself. And honestly, if the one slightly heavy thing to come from my 10-year high school reunion was a completely common feeling that several other people probably left with, I think I'm okay with that. It could have been so much worse. And I am so glad that I didn't exclude myself from a milestone I'd always looked forward to just because of the possibility that some people wouldn't have wanted me there. Now, I'm not advocating any trans or queer people to go to their reunions in possibly unaccepting communities without a lot of forethought, a support network, and a safety net, but it worked out for me. And I would like to think it will for a lot of other people too, especially as the years go on, if we can stop some of the very terrifying uprisings that are happening in the world right now. But that is a whole other video that I don't want to talk about right now, except to say that if you are eligible to vote in the United States, please go vote on November 6th, or early vote, file an absentee, whatever. Just make sure that you vote and that you talk to at least 5 friends about making their plans to vote as well. I'll put links you need for making informed voter decisions in the description box. Please do your part. Even if you think it won't help, do it in honor of someone who can't vote. And with that said, if you liked this video, please do subscribe for more videos like it every Wednesday here on Jack is Not a Bird. In the comments, I want to know if you've been to a high school reunion, or do you think you'll go to yours in the future? How was it, or what fears do you have? I would love to hear from all of you. And if you want to follow along with my life in real time and see my thoughts on stuff like books and movies and the burning dumpster fire of our world, you can follow me at Jack is Not a Bird on Twitter and Instagram. And don't forget, my podcast Transmission is back for season 2. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you get podcasts. Someday, I want to interview the other trans guys who went to my high school for the podcast. Didn't work out this time, but dude, one of them, we all transitioned after high school, but one of them has the same birth name and birthday as me. It's weird. But anyways, thank you all for your support on things like this, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.